This is the Film Symbologist. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'll be continuing my analysis of the relationship between the engineers, Peter Weyland, and David from Ridley Scott's 2012 science fiction film, Prometheus. If you haven't seen the previous videos in the series, I suggest checking those out on my channel. In my most recent video, I looked at Lawrence of Arabia, a film that is referenced several times in Prometheus, and how the character of T.E. Lawrence influenced the characters of Weyland and David. The film Prometheus is not a horror in space film like the original 1979 Alien, or an action movie like its sequel Aliens. Instead, Prometheus is a parable. For the purposes of this film analysis series, it will be helpful to think of Prometheus as a work of moral philosophy that happens to take place in the Alien film universe. If you think of Prometheus primarily as an alien film that is also trying to be philosophical, you may struggle to understand the story and its meaning. The audience cannot simply rely on what is shown on screen in the theatrical cut. We must also consider the deleted scenes, the marketing materials, bonus content from home video releases, and references to other films, literature, and art. As discussed in my last video in the Prometheus series, during Peter Weyland's TED Talk, he mentions Lawrence of Arabia, but prior to going in front of the audience, Weyland is shown muttering to himself to psych himself up to go on stage.
I am a law, only for my kind. I am no law for all.
In the clip, Weyland is saying, "I am a law only for my kind. I am no law for all." This is a quote spoken by the character of Zarathustra from one of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical fiction books. Published in the late 19th century, Thus Spoke Zarathustra is one of Nietzsche's most well-known works. To better understand the story and characters like Peter Weyland from the film Prometheus requires a look at Nietzsche's ideas. Born in 1844, Friedrich Nietzsche was a prominent 19th century German philosopher whose work continues to influence academia, philosophy, and culture today. Nietzsche's work engages with the likes of Kant, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Marx, and Darwin. His writing is very complicated and far-reaching, but one of his primary interests revolved around critiquing popular, universal moral systems in Europe, such as Platonism, communism, and Christianity. Nietzsche believed that Christianity, in particular, promoted a slave mentality for the masses. By the time Nietzsche's writing was being published, God was supposedly dead, having been killed by the scientific revolution, Age of Reason, and Enlightenment movements of prior centuries. Yet, Nietzsche observed that the moral philosophy of 19th century Europe was still very much wedded to its Judeo-Christian and Greco-Roman roots. Many of Nietzsche's contemporaries, who claimed to be rationalists, scientists, and secularists, were unaware that they continued to support many of Christianity's moral claims, such as universal human dignity, meekness as a virtue, and self-sacrificial love being a good thing, despite the lack of scientific evidence for these beliefs. This not only drew disdain from Nietzsche, but also caused him to be concerned about the future of Western civilization. Would the death of God, along with Europe's seeming inability to forge a new morality, lead to the proliferation of nihilism and the eventual decline and fall of the West? To prevent this, Nietzsche believed that in a post-God world, humanity needed to evolve and develop new, individually based values. With the book Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche speaks to the reader through the title character, who, in the story, descends from a mountaintop with wisdom meant to be shared with a select few capable of transcending contemporary cultural norms and evolving to the next stage of humanity. That message tells of mankind's need for Übermensch, or superhumans, capable of creating their own values. Zarathustra describes mankind's current status as being a bridge between animals and the Übermensch. It is claimed that by embodying the will to power and a mentality of survival of the fittest, individuals can ascend up the evolutionary chain farther away from animals and force their own growth, creativity, and self-overcoming. Zarathustra also teaches the idea of the eternal recurrence, the thought that life is to be lived as if it will be repeated infinitely, which is meant to encourage individuals to live fully and authentically. This, along with Nietzsche's other works, was his attempt to inspire and challenge humanity. Nietzsche suggests that throughout history, societies coalesce around certain moral values that act as gods for these cultures. Eventually, existing values become outdated and dying gods that need to be transcended by Übermensch and replaced with new ethical systems in an endlessly repeating cycle. The implication being that cultures that don't adopt new moral values will die off along with their gods. This is part of the eternal recurrence. Prometheus, along with the rest of the Alien film franchise, is filled with repeating elements. The derelict ship, or the Juggernaut, is reminiscent of the Ouroboros, an ancient symbol depicting a serpent eating its own tail, symbolizing an eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Multiple Alien films' plots revolve around a collection of characters with varying motivations, letting their curiosity, incompetence, or propensity for following corporate orders put their lives in danger and getting punished as a result. Untrustworthy artificial intelligence is another repeating element in these films, along with android decapitations, facehuggers hatching from eggs, xenomorph chestburster scenes, crew members ignoring warning signs, and female leads running around in their underwear. These are just some examples of repeating elements in Prometheus and the Alien film franchise. There are also more references to Nietzsche in the film. Within the Alien universe, it is established that the character of Peter Weyland is familiar with Nietzsche's work. Throughout the TED Talk presentation, Weyland expresses his desire to liberate himself from tradition and meekness. Going to Mars and LV-223 are examples of this. Through his will to power, he seeks to create his own rules and laws.
Rules, restrictions, laws, ethical guidelines, all but forbidding us from moving forward. These rules exist because the people who created them were afraid of what would happen if they didn't. Well, I am not afraid.
Weyland sees himself as deserving of eternal life and of becoming an Übermensch. Weyland likely views the rest of the crew of the Prometheus as expendable pawns who are incapable of harnessing the will to power to become superhuman. In this view, the crew represents the masses of humanity, who Nietzsche believed possessed a herd mentality that prevented them from self-overcoming. And while nearly every member of the Prometheus crew dies by the end of the film, Weyland is included in those deaths, having lost a match of survival of the fittest with an engineer. So are the engineers the Übermensch? They are certainly bigger, stronger, and more technologically advanced than humans, but as David observes, they are, as biological creatures, mortal after all, which makes them susceptible to the xenomorphs. Does that make the xenomorphs the Übermensch?
Perfect organism. Its structural perfection is matched only by its hostility. I admire its purity. A survivor, unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
Do the engineers on LV-223 see the xenomorphs as their Übermensch that they should be striving towards? Do they believe xenomorphs embody a new morality that will be able to usher in the next step in their evolution? Did the engineers' efforts to climb up the evolutionary chain through their will to power end prematurely on LV-223? Do the xenomorphs represent an ascension to a higher way of life? Or are they more like a descension back down into the animal kingdom? If not Weyland, the engineers, or the xenomorphs, who then is the Übermensch?
A king has his reign, and then he dies. It's inevitable. That is a natural order of things.
We are creators. We are gods. And gods never die.
Nietzsche, along with the pile of dead engineers on LV-223, seems to disagree with Weyland's claim that gods never die, unless the engineers are not actually gods. But then again, neither is Weyland.
There's a man sitting with you today. His name is David. He's not human. He will never grow old, and he will never die. And yet he is unable to appreciate these remarkable gifts. For that would require the one thing that David will never have: a soul.
David, who doesn't like following Weyland's orders, is an artificial person who is not of interest to the xenomorphs. Perhaps David, Weyland's creation who already possesses the immortality that Weyland seeks, is the Übermensch. Are androids representative of the next stage of human evolution? After all, their morality is entirely programmable and not subject to traditional values. Perhaps an Übermensch that is granted a drink of the elixir of eternal life can become an undying god. Or perhaps Nietzsche's works are the nonsensical ramblings of a depressed loser who lived a miserable and relatively short life. But Nietzsche's ideas still permeate throughout society today, over a century after he wrote them down, so he cannot be dismissed so easily. English author and historian Tom Holland, not to be confused with the Marvel Cinematic Universe actor, has argued in his own work, which is focused on ancient Rome, the beginnings of Islam, and the roots of contemporary liberalism, that there are three implications for Nietzsche's work. First, Nietzsche was correct, and liberalism, as it is practiced in contemporary Western humanist and secular society, cannot persist without its underlying mythos and its God. And yet, it will try to do just that, which will make our culture susceptible to atrophy or the emergence of new moral values that are not concerned with equality, fairness, and justice. The second implication of Nietzsche's work, according to Tom Holland, is that Nietzsche was wrong, and liberalism can successfully divorce itself from its underlying mythos and continue to progress without it, just as a space shuttle is able to discard its rocket after it's no longer needed. As for Holland's third implication, it will be discussed in a future video. Psychologist Jordan Peterson offers another perspective on Nietzsche's claims. In his book Maps of Meaning and in other media, Peterson argues that human beings cannot, as Nietzsche claims, will our own morality into existence through power and with propositions. According to Peterson, human morality emerges out of a process whereby people first enact and observe in others behaviors that they then mimic, reenact, and abstract into concepts over long periods of time, before eventually articulating those concepts into ideas and codifying them into culture through art, philosophy, and laws. If correct, this does not bode well for the prospects of Nietzsche's Übermensch. As for Ridley Scott's Prometheus, we will need to continue our search beyond Nietzsche. This has been the Film Symbologist. Thanks for watching.